Now, they call him King of the North, but some people in the party are beginning to wonder if he's got his eyes on the Iron Throne. Andy Burnham has been frantically busy at the conference. The Labour Mayor for Greater Manchester, of course. He's joined me just before I came on air, and I started off by asking him what he thought about the mood of the conference and whether the party seemed really confident it would win the next election.
It does. I would be very worried if I was the Tory party right now, because the mood of this conference is upbeat. It feels like a get ready for government conference. I remember, because obviously I was in the 80s, and I remember the 94 Labour conference, 95 and 96. It feels a bit like conference felt in that era.
And then, of course, you were in government and in cabinet after those conferences. And I just can't believe that you don't have it inside you to get back around a cabinet table one day.
Well, who knows? I never say never, Andrew. But I think part of Labour's story going forward is to take power out of Westminster, and we need to embrace that more enthusiastically, I think, than perhaps we've done so far. But I'm hopeful that that will be part of the next Labour government's story. You know, for the first conference in 12 since we left government, this is the first one where I think it's odds on that we'll be the government within a year, or let's say within 2 years. It does feel that way to me.
And so there is great excitement around. I've been trying to count how many events and fringes Andy Burnham has been doing at this Liverpool conference, but I've run out of toes and fingers. It's a lot. It's a lot. Are you sure that you are not coming back into Parliament? Because you have a lot of support in the party. A lot of the things that you are saying are resonating. A lot of people want you back at the top of the Labour Party in Parliament. That can only be in Parliament, which means finding a seat and fighting it and going back.
Well, I'll answer it honestly one day, but I'm not planning for that now. You know, I'm Mayor of Greater Manchester. We are doing big things in our city region. We're putting buses back under public control. We're introducing a fare cap. We're creating a London-style public transport system. That's big. And if I actually compare that with what I used to do in Westminster, I prefer this that I'm doing now, because it's real, and you can see the impact it has on people. Westminster often was stuff that you pull a lever and you think something's going, doesn't quite, and it takes ages. So this job is energising, and I'm committed to it. But as I say, I'm not going to rule out, Andrew, that one day I will, in the end, head back.
But you won't be going back before the next general election?
No. I'm committed to a full second term as Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Now, among the many things that you've been talking about up and down the conference here, you've talked a lot about public sector wages. Yeah. We had a very interesting intervention from Rachel Reeves when she was saying, they would put back the 45p rate and use that money entirely to fund extra training for nurses and care workers. Do you see that as the big dividing line now? Either tax cuts or money for working people, because the latter is very, very expensive. You're actually going to help people beat inflation.
Yeah, but it's the right way to frame it, as Rachel did. The risk to public services is severe right now, because obviously they're all under pressure anyway. But we have a situation where nurses, firefighters, care workers, the pay that they're being offered is nowhere near enough to keep their head above water. So how can they keep these services running for us over the coming period? And personally, I would prioritise pay rises over tax cuts. That is the issue that's right in front of us, and it needs a serious intervention. And I couldn't believe it, actually, that the budget on Friday made no mention of it. The budget, as you look at it now with the perspective we've got, was economically reckless, socially reckless, and I think even for the Tories, politically reckless.
We've all been focusing, for obvious reasons, on the tax cuts, but perhaps more significant, longer term, is going to be this announcement that there will not be a public sector pay review or a public sector spending review. In other words, things will be capped at the current level, which means, in practice, cuts everywhere.
That's what I mean. I think that's the scariest thing in many ways, because that's biting right now. And I'll give you a very tangible example of why it's a problem. So, in Greater Manchester, firefighters have had real terms cuts because of government cuts to fire grant for a number of years. That's even before the cost of living crisis, and they're being offered 2%. Who can blame them for threatening to go out on strike because they can't feed their families anymore? That's the position that they're in. But if the government forces them to do that, I have to spend public money bringing in alternative fire cover. So we're wasting public money in a different way. The only answer, honestly, there's only one answer here. profession by profession, firefighters, nurses, the whole lot, the government should be sitting down and doing a one-year pay deal to help carry the country through, not a winter of discontent, a winter of real danger. A winter of real danger in terms of the threat to
fabric of public services. And we've heard in the hall today union leader after union leader talk about the need for strike action, that people are being pushed into that. And you are clear that the Labour Party, clues in the name, people should be standing shoulder to shoulder with those people on the picket lines and in theory.
I think it's different to anything we've seen before. These are people fighting for their income. They're fighting to keep their head above water. And if it was one, if you like, truculent union on their own, that would be but it's not, is it? This is one after another, all saying the same thing. Our members will not be able to make things work. And if you take the example of firefighters, for which I am responsible, how can we ask people to go out and protect other people's homes if they're not secure in their own home environment? You know, you can't ask people to do that. And I think this really shows the hollowness and the shallowness of modern politics. Politician after politician stood there and clapped these people 2 years ago. And that just now looks so superficial, doesn't it? Because the same people are now in dire straits. And I don't think Westminster is paying enough attention to this issue. The threat to public services over the coming winter because of the failure to do a sensible one-year cost of living pay settlement sector by sector.
Would you like to see Keir Starmer, and he's clearly leading a united party at the moment, would you like to see him encourage people to go out onto those picket lines rather than try to stop them?
I understand Keir's in a different position, and bear in mind, I want to say this clearly, I'm here, I support Keir. I think he can be the next Prime Minister within a very short order now. And he has got a different job to do than the job I've got to do. But the call he should be making is on a resolution of this situation. And the resolution is sit down with the unions, agree a one-year deal. It might be part pay increase, part one-off payment to carry us through a very challenging year. That's what I would hope to hear from Keir. Let's get a solution. This is not about we want the conflict for the sake of it. The Tories want the conflict for the sake of it. We should be the party that's calling for a solution.
Let me ask you about one other big policy area that people are talking about, which is voting reform or PR or whatever you call it. You are a big supporter of that.
Yeah.
The problem from your point of view is that if the Labour Party wins an overall majority under the current system, and the latest opinion poll suggests you might have an overall 56-seat majority under the first-past-the-post system, the motivation to then go through all the trauma and the difficulty of changing the voting system and all the controversy that involves, it's just, the motivation's not there, the wind's not at your back. You've won under first-past-the-post, you'll stick under first-past-the-post. That is what happened every single time this issue has come up before.
And every time that's come up before, Labour's failed to take the long view. And the long view is, if you look back at the last century, so 1922 to 2022, how many of those years have we been in power? Two-thirds at least of that time, the Conservatives have been in power because the system works for them much better than it works for anybody else. And the thing about first past the post, when you combine it with the parliamentary whip system, it has the effect of concentrating power in a very small number of hands in the Whitehall system. I'd say no more than 50 to 100. Those people control the system, and we've all lived through...
You're talking about people like the whips, the senior civil servants, the party managers.
I am. Well, also, the civil... It empowers the executive, to be honest, over Parliament. And I think we've had a graphic demonstration this summer of how this doesn't work for the majority, because we've had a party in power having a leadership election where they were making promises to their donors and to their members to do certain things in power, and they've come through and they've done it. They've actually gone and done it. They've produced a budget for their own people, their own party, that is not in the interests of the country. And that, I think, more than anything, shows the case for change.
Let me ask you about two things that come out of that. For instance, first is this rather unsettling report that a group of financial guys who supported the current Prime Minister then went and shorted the pound. In other words, were able to kind of make a short-term profit over what was happening. Do you think that the current system of money sitting alongside the parties at Westminster is corrupt?
It gets close, doesn't it? It sails close to the wind. And this is where it gets very murky, because what was promised to whom in the leadership election, I don't know. But what I do know is the Westminster system leaves itself open to that. You know, I describe it this way, Andrew. If Westminster was a computer system, measures would have been taken by now to stop it being hacked. But I think you can hack our political system because of the concentration of too much power in too smaller space, in too few hands. And I think it leaves us all open to vested interests manipulating that system and manipulating it in their interests rather than a system that works for all of the country. So I do say, if you had a proportional system to elect the Commons, that would transfer power, I think, to the Commons over the Executive, a Senate of the nations and regions to replace the Lords, and more devolution of power out of Parliament into the country, a plan to rewire Britain, redistribute power across Britain, make it flow differently, and that would be a country that would then work better for everybody everywhere.
Andy, we've talked about abolishing the Lords and replacing it with his Senate before. Now, we don't really know what Keir Starmer's view is going to be on that, but there is the Commission being led by Gordon Brown, former Prime Minister, on all of this, and we're expecting that to report later in the year. How optimistic are you that Labour is going to, as it were, make a radical jump at that moment?
Well, I really hope that the party does do that, and I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing about accepting the plan for a Senate of the nations and regions as Gordon is proposing. But I hope they take the whole package of a more federal Britain, where everywhere is more master of its own destiny. I think that would make us a country that functions better, that is more at ease with itself, you know, feels less done to. I just think it would be a sensible move that would be right for the times that we're in. And Gordon, I think, has done a terrific service for the party in the work that he's done.
Andy Burnham, one final question. Various other people, not least Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, have said that it's pretty outrageous that Parliament is not in emergency session just now because of what's happened to the pound, what's happening on the markets. Would you like to see Parliament recalled?
I think there's a very strong case for that. You know, here we are. We're still debating those issues, though, aren't we, at party conference? I think we'll have to watch what happens. But as I said before, the budget was certainly socially reckless. They've left people exposed to a very, very dangerous winter. It was politically reckless for the Tories' own purposes, because I think they've made a catastrophic political judgment, but it's economically reckless too. It's not working on its own terms. They've lost the confidence of the markets, and I think we are in very, very serious times right now, and nothing can be ruled out. And I don't think you could rule out Parliament having to come back together to make sense of the chaos that the Tories have inflicted on us.
Well, I'm not going to take that as your injunction to head back south, Andrew, as soon as possible. But for now, Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, thanks for coming in and talking.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.